Hey, what's up everybody? This is Osterberg501 and today I want to go over how you're very easily able to solo farm level 60 chests in one of the level 60 plus elite areas in New World. Now, going and farming these elite open world areas is an incredibly important part of the endgame of New World right now. And once you get into the high level zones, they're scattered everywhere. And these are essentially open world dungeons. They're completely filled with elite enemies. In the higher tier zones, they're level 60 or above, and most of them say they recommend 5 players. You can usually do most of these with less than 5 players, but the bosses in these areas will usually require a full group to do them. The bosses are actually pretty hard, and you pretty much come to these for farming the enemies to try to continue to upgrade your gear scores. All of the level 60 weapon quests take you to tons of different elite zones, and then one of the most important part of doing these is the chests that are scattered all throughout these elite areas. There's chests everywhere, and once you're doing ones that are level 60 plus, you're going to be getting tier 5 resources in most chests. You're going to be getting a ton of gear, and there's also a ton of additional rarer resources and other items you can get from these chests. And I found one of these elite zones that pretty much has no ranged enemies. I think the one ranged enemy is the boss in here, and with how this area is laid out, it's a bunch of short walkways with railings on the sides, so you can just kite around these melee enemies and loot all the chests you want. So you can come in here pretty easily and solo loot 90% of the chests in this area and get a ridiculous amount of loot, then wait the hour that I think the chests respawn in and go back and do it again. So this area is going to be called Caminus, and this is going to be at the bottom middle of Shattered Mountains. And it's going to be a level 61 area, recommended 5 again, but this one is incredibly easy, like I said, especially to kite around enemies because there's no ranged enemies, and none of the enemies really have any super quick attacks that gain a lot of distance. Like if you're fighting a lot of the ancient earth enemies, a lot of them have leaps, big jumps, or stuff like that. None of these enemies have that. They pretty much just walk at you, so it's incredibly easy to kite them around. And the one thing you're going to want is you're going to want a ice gauntlet, and you're going to want the ice shower ability. You don't have to have a really high level ice gauntlet. You don't have to be into intelligence. The main thing you're going to be using this for is to CC the enemies, slow them down, root them, so you can kite them around, root them, then go loot the chests. Because if you take damage, it stops you from looting that chest, and it doesn't save the amount of time you spent trying to loot the chest before. So say if you're harvesting a rock or something and you get interrupted and you go back to harvesting that rock, it keeps the progress, but not with any of these chests. So you have to fully loot them at one time to get all the loot. And I'll have footage of a run all throughout this video, so you'll be able to see much more easily what I'm talking about and how easy it is to kite around these enemies to be able to loot all of these chests. You could pretty much loot all of the chests except the few chests that are up with the boss, because the boss is a ranged enemy, so it's just going to keep interrupting you when you try to loot those. But pretty much everything else in this area, with using the ice gauntlet, with using ice shower, you should be able to loot it. An ice shower essentially just creates a wall of frost, which will root enemies for a second, then they won't be able to dodge or sprint. It slows them by 50% for 3 seconds, and ice shower has a 4-second duration. So it's essentially just a slow and a root are the main things you want this for. So you're just going to kite up enemies, place this down, and then run over as fast as you can to the chest you're trying to loot it, jump off a ledge, or roll away from these enemies, and then go loot the next chest. It's actually really easy, especially when you get used to it and you realize the attack patterns and how these AI work. You'll be able to loot all of these chests really easily without having much difficulty. And you're going to be getting a ridiculous amount of good loot from doing these chest runs. So the main thing you're going to be getting are tier 5 versions of all of the crafting reagents. So sandpaper, flux, solvent, all that type of stuff. You're going to be getting a ton of those. And those are all selling between 1 to 3 gold on my server a piece. So you're able to make a ton of gold just from those. And you're going to get hundreds and hundreds of those from doing a single run. So you're going to be getting a ton of those. Also be careful, those weigh quite a bit. So I'd make sure you empty your bag before going to do this. Then you're going to be getting a ton of different gear pieces when you get the bigger chests. And those are just random. But the really good thing about getting those gear pieces, even if they're all just greens, is that with with how getting gear score upgrades works in this game, looting those chests, you could potentially get gear score upgrades. So that specific slot will now have a higher watermarked gear score, and you can get 5+ items from a single one of the bigger chests in these areas. And that's not to mention that you can also get higher rarity items, so your rares, your epics, out of those chests as well. And I recommend keeping an eye on all those items you get, because even some of the greens can sell. I'd mainly look for items that rolled one single stat on them, so full dexterity, full strength, stuff like that usually sells pretty well. And then there are some rarer resources and items you can also get out of these chests. So for this specific area, every chest has a chance to give you a molten rune. And this is a legendary resource that is used for the Genesis tuning orb, which is one of the level 60 dungeons. And this dungeon drops a ton of different legendaries, so it's incredibly sought after. So these molten runes are always going to be worth quite a bit of gold. There's not a ton on my server, but the ones that are up are selling for 1,000 gold plus. So currently they're worth a ton of gold. I expect when more people start hitting 60, these are probably going to go down. I would say they'll probably sit like 200 to 300 gold most of the time once more start to get on the market. And then you also have rarer items past that. And I actually ended up getting one of these. So all of these chests have a chance to give you these really rare recipes. And I got a legendary quality recipe that when you use it, it teaches you how to craft the epic waning crescent staff, which is a gear score 590 epic staff. And you'll be able to get a ton of different recipes here. They're obviously very rare, but you can get recipes to craft legendary weapons, very high tier epic weapons, all different types of stuff. And those are going to be very rare drops from only chests in these areas or boss creatures from these areas. So that's pretty much all I wanted to go over for this farm. You're going to go to this area, you're going to kite around all these melee enemies, use your ice gauntlet to root them and slow them down, and run around and loot all of the elite chests in this area for tons of rare items, tons of resources to go sell, and tons of possible gear upgrades. So subscribe if you want to see more New World or other MMO videos. Leave a like if you liked the video, leave a comment down below what you guys think about this farm, and thanks for watching.